everyone. I'm here with Brendan from All This Filth, who's just dropped a really amazing album um, not long ago. I think it was like a week or 2 weeks ago. I think I'm confusing the launch with the what was the date of the record that dropped?
Okay, so the album. Firstly, thanks for having me, and nice to see you again, Mark. It's always a pleasure to chat and see you. The album came out February 9th, and the album launch was last Friday, the 23rd of February. The reason being, basically, is because we were going to have the album launch the day after the album came out, but there was another show in Perth. Some of our mate fans were playing. We didn't want to clash with that, and because it was Fringe Festival was on at the moment in Perth, it was hard to get venues because as I've mentioned here before, there have been some venue closures here in Perth, so there was less and less venues for any sort of gig. So we had to wait a couple of weeks before we could get the venue we wanted, which was the Rosemount Hotel, for the album launch. And so we did the album launch last Friday. It went beautiful. Good turnout, great sound, and all the other bands killed it. And we played pretty well, and the night was good. The energy was electric. Pretty happy with that.
Yeah, the footage I seen was really good, and I liked the mix of supports you had. It was really pretty eclectic, but still in that realm.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of mixing genres of heavy. I think it keeps things interesting. We had our friends from Buried Shallow who played just before us. Mark, the guitarist of Buried Shallow, actually wrote and recorded on the album that we've just released, Tomorrow Will Be Better. So he was a member of ours. He was in both bands for a while, but then he left to go do that band. Because that was more his passion, so that was cool. And then before, who else was on the bill? I'm just trying to remember now. I mean, it was only a week ago. I can't remember. We had Von Spriggan.
Yeah.
Von Spriggan opened up now. It was his first live show, like in person. He did a lot on Twitch and all that sort of stuff. It's a one-man industrial metal band, and I highly recommend, if you get into industrial metal, which I do personally, I highly recommend you check out Von Spriggan. He does it all himself. It's really cool because it was just him with his sample pads and his guitar. So he was doing vocals and guitar and a backing track, laptop triggering sounds. It was really cool, sample pads. Alosa. And the best way to describe them, and this is no shade on them because they're a fantastic band and what they do, they're like Perth's answer to the Black Dahlia Murder. They get into Black Dahlia Murder. They play that style of, for lack of a better word, technical deathcore. Great technical musicians, brutal as, the vocals, the drums, the guitars, bass, everything, just superb. They put on a great show, and the whole night, the sound was good, the vibe was good, and I'm all about the energy and the vibe. Like, if you can feel it in the room, it just makes it so much easier. So, yeah, it was an eclectic mix of bands. Because very shallow sort of deathcore meets groove metal. We do like that industrial tinge groove metal with bits of new metal, bits of sludge, bits of death, bits of this and that. We just throw it all in there and just hope for the best. It was a good night. And all great bands and friendly dudes. So you can't really ask for anything more. Just great vibes, great times, and the crowd was electric. The energy was electric. So many good conversations with the ATF crew, which are our fans. We love them. They just show up. They know the words. They go off in the pit. They hit us up at the merch stand, and they really just power us through. Give us that energy. I like to say, when we get on stage, we send out the energy, right? And when you're having a good gig and the crowd's getting into it, they get that energy and they take it and then they send it back to you. And then it just goes back and forwards like that all night. And when you can feel that, that's just gold. That's when you can go for a 10 out of 10 gig. When you've got, for me personally, when you're playing well, first thing you got to do is play well. When you got good sound on and off stage, and when the crowd is electric, those three elements can make a great gig. So yeah, and you need the energy. So that's the X factor, is the energy. So 4 elements that make a great gig, and we had all 4 of those elements on Friday. So yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, launched pretty well by the sound of it, and 100%. I think that energy is a big thing because you can have you can play a smaller gig and still have that good energy, and the feedback from the crowd when you're playing, and then also kind of the vibe before and after as well. Like that's.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. A perfect example of the smaller crowd but great vibe was when we actually toured Victoria and where I met you in person. When we played in Sunbury, it was the first time we played with your band Night, and it was a fantastic night. Small crowd, like in a sort of out of the way sort of place in Victoria, Sunbury. It's weird. It's like a venue in an industrial area. Great little venue. Sound System Studios. Good manager and like just great people there. But yeah, it wasn't a massive turnout. Not gonna lie, but the crowd, everyone there, it was still a good vibe, and it was a great time. It was one of the highlights. The tour was actually playing with these guys and getting on stage and doing Like Rats, Godflesh.
Yeah, that was
Like Rats. That was one of my highlights of the tour. The entire Victorian tour, East Coast Lows tour, we called it. Which by the way is a weather reference. Like over here in WA, when we're watching the weather, we always hear about the East Coast lows, and I was like, sounds like a brutal name for a tour. You know what I mean?
I wondered about that.
Yeah, so that's where I got it from. I just love the phrase East Coast lows because our lyrically and just vibe wise tend to deal with a bit more of the darker matter in the world, and the lows of humanity and the lows of being alive. And so I just thought East Coast lows. We're on the East Coast. It's all about lows. So, but there was a lot of highs. The tour was great. And actually the Filth-FFO was good. That well attended. That was on the Saturday, and then the Sunday gig. Again, not great turnout in Fitzroy, but again the crowd, good vibe. Everyone got into it, and we could feel that. So yeah, like you said, you can actually, it's funny because you can play gigs where you've got a massive crowd and for whatever reason the energy is just not there, and like you can be like, oh cool, and you can play awesome. You can play gigs where you can play a solid perfect set, you can play your set perfectly, make no mistakes, and still that vibe's not there. So you're like, I wonder what was that. Cool, we had fun, but what was up with that? But then like you said, you can play maybe not your best. You can be a little bit off one night in a small venue with a small crowd, and it can, for whatever reason, just that electricity with the crowd, it can go off, and it can still be a good time. So, it's interesting. I think it's that the energy is that sort of X factor that you can't account for. You cannot manufacture that. It's just either there and everyone's on it, or it's not, and you just do your best one way or another. So yeah, that's the X factor that you cannot account for. But yeah, it's funny, like I said, you should mention that because that's sort of how it was for 2 of the 3 Victorian shows. And like I said, the whole tour was great because of that. We still had a big crowd at Filth-FFO, so it wasn't like we came across and played for small, so it was good.
Excellent. No, that's good. I wanted to dip a little bit into. We're definitely going to dip into talking about the album. I wanted to kind of kick back to kind of, I believe it's like 2008 or so. That's when you guys started. Is that right? A little bit about the back history of the band. Let's kind of go there. Maybe some things about maybe the initial kind of concept of what you had for the band, or the influences, prior bands, or anything, piece of colour you want to add to that.
Alright, cool. Yeah, it's funny because the guys in the band call me the band historian because I'm the only guy that's been there from the beginning. I'm the only member of the original lineup that's still in the band, which, happens these days. It's just how it is. Even a lot of my favourite bands is maybe only 1 or 2 members left from the original lineup. So yeah, back in the day, I was in a band called Dissonant, which I started with some friends of mine over here in Perth, and we were just a bunch of friends playing metal, and we sort of wanted to take groove metal, bit of thrash, bit of death metal, and just sort of put it together. So like the influences were like Sepultura, Fear Factory, Soulfly, and a few other things. And so that was dissonant. We only ever played like one show. We were around a short time, not a long time. We were there for a good time, but and that sort of fell apart. And when in the ashes of that, myself and my mate Jared, who was our bassist, came across and we started All This Filth. And the name All This Filth actually comes from a dissonant song called All This Filth. I was like, oh, I like the name of that song. Let's just carry that across. And it sort of just stuck. And that's how that started. And the initial idea was to mix together, like, say, Sepultura, the groove and the aggression of Sepultura with the industrial leanings of, like, Fear Factory. So I want to add a bit of groove to industrial. And then and add in like Chimera, which I felt was doing that already. So those were three of the biggest influences in the early days were Sepultura, Fear Factory, Chimera, and then like later on, Ministry, Nail Bomb, and that. And I add in a bit of like hardcore. Like I love a lot of hardcore bands, hardcore punk. I got into hardcore through Hatebreed, and they do that crossover sort of thing. They did a cover album called For the Lions. And for some reason, not a lot of people know that, but so half the album is like metal songs, Sepultura, Slayer, Obituary, etc. And then the other half of the album is fantastic, like hardcore bands. And I really dug a lot of the New York hardcore bands. So like Agnostic Front, Sick of It All, Madball. Those were the big three for me. I got into them through that album, and then explored a bit of hardcore. And so yeah, and then I've always liked a bit of industrial music as well. One of my early influences was Rammstein, when I was a kid, and Static X was big for me. And like I said, then later on Ministry, and I was always a massive Nail Bomb fan. Max Cavalera, pretty much anything Max Cavalera puts in hand to, I've sort of at least enjoyed on some level. But he's a big influence of mine. Machine Head was a big influence as well back in the early days. Just the groove and the aggression. So yeah, we took all those and we tried to like combine them because a lot of bands sort of want to stick in one lane, and that's absolutely fine. If you want to form a band and everyone's influence is Lamb of God and you want to sound like Lamb of God, that's absolutely fine. I love Lamb of God. Knock yourself out. That's awesome. But I've always wanted to add elements. I just find that more interesting for me. So that was the early days of All This Filth anyways. That's what we tried to do, and I guess that's what we're still doing now, taking death metal, industrial metal, groove metal, a little bit of new metal, that's just the era we grew up, and throwing all those things in there, but definitely wanted to bring it in more of the industrial stuff, the samples, the synths, sort of to go complement and go over the top of the groovier and more aggressive stuff that we do. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you can hear that throughout, the albums, we're definitely going to kind of dip into the discography as well, but I think like I've heard all those releases, and I think it's evolving, which all the things you're talking about, I think that it keeps it from being dull, it keeps it fresh, definitely, as you were talking about earlier, the East Coast, Lows tour, live, it's, like I think I said to you that I really love the releases, but live you can really, it all comes to fruition there, and you can hear all of those influences, but it doesn't sound like one of them. And then even the little tweaks from the keyboards and stuff, that's all, it all comes together. You know what I mean? Like it's there's no copycat, part of it. That's what I love.
Yeah, I've always thought we're more of a live band as well. Like, that's not to say that the recordings aren't good. Like, they're solid, they're good. But I feel like the energy is the one, like, you can capture a certain amount of energy on a recording, but at the end of the day, you can't get that connection and that sort of energy until it's experienced live. And I guess there's some bands that are better on recording than they are live, and I think we might be the other way around, better live than we are on recording, because I think it's about an experience. Do you know what I mean? It's about, that can't be reproduced. Like, one gig is never the same as another, even if you're on tour and playing the same set list every night, or similar-ish set list every night. It's every night is a different experience. So I would say to people, if you can, like, even if you've got the ability and the funds, definitely go see a band on tour and go see 1 or 2 shows in a row. Because it'll be different every night. You'll experience something different. And every night you have a different experience, and that's great. Like, I definitely think that. So, yeah, and like, hopefully you can, you set out when you're writing these songs, and you hope you can reproduce that live. A lot of the early days, we just sort of jammed stuff out. So we were sort of doing it live and then going and recording it. So we could already do it live. So we weren't working the other way around, where a lot of bands can do that, where they do a lot of stuff in the studio. And they're like, well, now how do we replicate that live? And now we sort of do both. We sort of like, some of the stuff we'll jam it out live, and then some of the stuff we'll do in the studio and be like, right, now how do we replicate that live? So we're sort of, there's no one way that's the right way, it's the wrong way. We just do what we got to do, So.
And how is the lineup? Because I would say that the 2 gigs that I've seen of that tour, it was very tight. It looked like a really and I know that you've had Benny, who's on bass and keyboards. He's been around for a little while, and I think was he on the last album as well?
Yeah, he was on the last album.
Yeah.
He wrote some of the bass. I don't think he recorded any of the bass. He might have recorded 1 or 2 bits on bass, but he wrote all the keyboards, but most of the keyboards and samples. I think I did some, but I think he edited them anyways.
Yeah.
But I did some of the samples though. But yeah, he did most, if not all, of the keys and some of the bass on the last album. And so he's still from that album. The rest of the guys weren't on of this lineup weren't on that album. They joined after that, because after we recorded that album, like I said, Mark had left to go do Buried Shallow, and some of the other guys left for various other reasons. I know Hayden left because he was having another kid, so for family reasons. And so people left for various reasons. I'm not going to speak for those guys. But yeah, so we just kept going. And over the years, I've, had to replace people in and out for various reasons, whether it be some for family, some for other bands, some just didn't want to do it anymore. And, various reasons. It is what it is. Yeah, exactly. It's band life. So you just keep going the best you can, basically. You do the best you can do.
So I think, so I think that lineup, I suppose one comment I would make, it seemed like you guys have been playing for a very long time. It was very in sync, I would say.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed about that. Like, it was exceptionally tight as well, but it was like for what you were playing, but it was also very together and very integrated. That's what I would, and that's like generally international bands and local bands. I find that's a bit of a rarity sometimes, so that's a big compliment to the band, really.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's interesting you say that, because this lineup here, we've only been as this lineup basically a year now. We've only been together as this lineup for a year. We sort of came together around this time last year. And I think that's more just hard work, rehearsal, everyone practicing on their own. Everyone sort of, it's just practice and putting in the hours and doing the hard yards. There's no substitute for it. There's no magic. There's no magic here that, there's no trick. It's just hard work, perseverance. You just keep going, you just keep playing, keep rehearsing, keep jamming, and that's basically why that is the way it sounds. Yeah.
Excellent. Now I wanted to move on to your discography and obviously about the new album. What do you think's the biggest difference between Misery Season, which was 2019, moving to the most current album? What do you think's the major difference between the two? Obviously, lyrically, it's we're definitely going to drop into the lyrical stuff very soon. But what's the major differences for you, like between the two albums? I mean, even the first 11 Past as well. You could even go back that far as well, and that's probably a bigger jump, isn't it?
Yeah. 11 Past is the sound of a bunch of dudes who were doing the best they could with the skills and resources they had at that time. a bunch of dudes who were inexperienced, including myself, just doing the best we could. That's the sound of that, and we just did the best we could then. Whereas, then we did an EP between that and Misery Season, which is called Program to Suffer, which came out in 2011. Wait, no, 2011 was 11 Past. 2013 was Program to Suffer. So we stepped it up a bit on that, and then another significant step up from Program to Suffer to Misery Season, where we're just learning and getting better. But lineup changes from 11 Past to Program to Suffer had a few lineup changes, but I kept the same guitarist, the main songwriter, and myself. And then to Misery Season was a totally different lineup, basically, except for me, obviously. And that one ended up being sort of without being meaning to be, ended up being a bit of a concept album. So the idea of Misery Season. The best way to describe the difference between Misery Season and Tomorrow Will Be Better, which is the latest album, would be to say that Misery Season, thematically, is kind of like going through hard times. The way I look at it is hard times come and go like a season does, right? So I think everyone goes through Misery Season every so often, whether it be, every couple of months, every couple of years, whatever. You will go through a Misery Season eventually. And so it comes and goes. And so Misery Season was sort of me telling the story of me like surviving that particular misery season that I was going through at the time. Now, Tomorrow Will Be Better literally starts where Misery Season left off. And there was actually some unfinished business from Misery Season on Tomorrow Will Be Better. The song Skyline, I'd originally intended thematically. We hadn't written anything for it. We just ran out of time on Misery Season and money and everything. So I intended Skyline to be on Misery Season, but I wanted to write that to finish that sort of process off. But when Misery Season ends with the song I'm the Fortress, it picks up in Tomorrow Will Be Better, which has a sample from I'm the Fortress coming in, and then that car crash sound, which is taken from my actual life. I actually was in a car accident when we were writing this album. So yeah, I just put it in there as a bit of a yep. So basically, Misery Season is like, this is me getting through a misery season. Tomorrow Will Be Better starts off and literally asks the question, where do we go from here? That's what the first song, It's Never Gonna Be Okay, is about, is that you can survive a misery season, you can survive hard times, and then you get through and you get to the other side, and then you're like, now what? Where do I go from here? I'm still having trouble battling my inner demons. I'm still looking around and I'm seeing that the world is still a mess. How do I navigate my way through all of this when I've survived that? So basically it's like these problems are sort of either gone or they're different, more rearranged. And now I've got to navigate a whole new set of problems and just continue to battle through life, basically. That's the main difference. Is whereas Misery Season is like, oh my God, I'm suffering and this is how I'm getting through this. Tomorrow Will Be Better ask the question, where to now? How do I get through this? What's next? So it's more about asking questions and then looking around at the world in general and being like, well, even if I get through the inner demons and the battles inside, how am I going to survive all this shit on the outside as well? Because the world can be a very uncaring and unfriendly place. So it's hard to find the inner strength to battle through your own demons when you look outside and you're like, why bother? There's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world, whether it be inside with the demons or outside with just how the world is. So yeah, that's where that's the main difference. It sort of continues on and asks questions rather than tells the story of how I got through, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, yeah. And I was going to say it's also about because I'd listened to Misery as well, and then when you come out and bought the physical CD, and it really dropped even harder when I read the lyrics. Like it dropped pretty hard before, and I knew a lot of the lyrics from it. But yeah, to physically have it in your hands, lyrically, yeah, I think it's pretty incredible because it's obviously a lot of personal stuff, introspection, reflection, everything, which is I think is a good element about the band. It's also kudos to you for being so honest because it's addressing it's you're laying it on the table basically. It's not many bands do that, man.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. Secondly, I'll say that as far as physical, I'm a fan of I'm just of that age of getting a physical CD. I like reading the liner notes, and I make sure I put a lot into the liner notes that obviously you're not going to get just by listening through Spotify or whatever. So you get a little bit more, and it's the same with this album. There's more in the liner notes if you read that. So yeah, I wanted to include that so people would have a more personal. You can sit down. I used to do that. I buy my favorite bands CDs, and you sit there and you read the lyrics, you read the liner notes, and you go on a journey and you listen to the album start to finish. And I understand that the music industry is changing. That's not how how a lot of people consume music these days. But I guess in heavy music, that is still done to an extent. There are people who do it. There are people who don't. Either way you experience is okay with me as long as you're experiencing it and getting something from it. As far as like laying myself bare and being honest, that's just because I'm just telling my story and from my perspective and point of view, and that's all I can do, and that's all I want to do. It's sort of a compulsion. I have to put it out there. A lot of bands, they do the fantasy thing. They do, Viking metal or pirate metal or whatever, and that's fine. Tell a story, have a bit of fun, whatever. And that's absolutely fine, but that's not what I want to do. I wanted to be like, I want to take all of this negativity that I'm seeing from the outside world or feeling on the inside, put it to record, put it out there, and hopefully someone can connect with it, get something positive out of all the negativity, and that's basically what I've set out to do with my music and lyrics and vocals. That's what I want to do. So yeah, that's why I lay it all on the line, and hopefully people get something good and positive out of it.
Yeah, I think it's like also in the liner notes of even that album that I've seen from other social media stuff and that as well. Yeah, the people, the impact, which is probably the same for all of us as well as many bands, the impact that you've had on people. Like I can relate to that and speaking about that. Like it's actually, it's a pretty kind of hardcore punk thing as well. You're using your platform as well. Like I think that's even as a teenager when you read like what you were talking about, you're reading the lyric sheet and you're like, no, that's how I feel. That's I can really, and I think that's you probably helped a lot of people. You know what I mean? I know when I read it, I was sort of pretty teary as well. Like it's pretty, that's emotive stuff. Like the music is very dynamic and, but yeah, those lyrics. So yeah, it's great.
No, thanks. I appreciate that because that's sort of something that, like I said, I set out to do. A lot of people have reached out to me and said that it has touched them in some way, affected them, and a lot of people said like with Misery Season that they teared up just with that first intro sample, which is actually just me reading out an actual suicide note that's not made up. That was a suicide note I wrote one day because I was going to like literally end it. It's actually kind of I wouldn't say funny story, but it's an interesting story, which I'll briefly touch on here. I've touched on it before, but so yeah, one day there was a lot going on in myself internally, and I decided that's it. I'm done. I'm out. I'm checking out. And I'd sort of decided that I'm going to end it. I knew where I was going to end it. I was going to go down to the South Perth foreshore in my car which is I still have it, but I don't drive it anymore. A Nissan Skyline, an 85 Nissan Skyline. And I was going to take it down to the South Perth foreshore, and basically I was just going to gas myself in the car while looking over the Perth skyline. Because in the South Perth foreshore you got the river and you can see the Perth city. So I went down there and I'd written a suicide note previous to that. Went from writing the suicide note. My guitarist at the time, Mark, had actually messaged me and said, "We still doing band stuff today?" And I thought, well, yeah, I may as well go do this beforehand, because otherwise people are going to get a little bit suspicious if I don't rock up at band stuff. So I went and did the band stuff with the full intention I was still going to go down there. And I went down there. I went and picked up a sandwich. I was hungry. I ate the sandwich. I went down to the foreshore and I was eating the sandwich. Had the windows down because it was a little bit warm. Unseasonably warm, actually, for October, because it was in October at the time, or late September, early October or something. And so I was down there. I was waiting for the sun to go down and basically for all the people to fuck off, so I could get out there and put the hose in and through the window and what have you. And so I'm sitting there with the window down, had the suicide note with me. I was really in a bad way mentally. And I'm not a big believer in fate or divine intervention or whatever, but I'll tell you this, and you can believe it or you can not believe it. But do you remember that song by the New Radicals that was big in the 90s or early noughties? That song, "You Get What You Give"?
Yeah.
Don't give up, you gotta reach. Anyway, so somebody drove by behind me, and it was sort of like the Doppler effect, right? So I could hear it coming, and this car, and they were cranking that song unreasonably loud. But when people go past, it's usually they're cranking rap or they're cranking metal or something heavy. Those are the things that you usually hear going past. But anyways, someone's cranking that song, and it went behind me. This car goes behind, and the only line from the song I hear are literally this: "Don't give up, you got a reason to live."
Yeah.
That's literally it. And I just started laughing, man, because I was like, fuck me, man. What are the odds that on the day that I was going to commit suicide, that I was down at the South Perth foreshore at that particular time, and on that particular day, what are the odds that that car drives past and I hear just that line? So thought better of it, and I thought, fuck it. I just got in the car and drove home, because I just thought, if there ever was going to be a sign, maybe that's a sign.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it was that close, and I'm still here basically because of it, through chance. I guess chance and perseverance. It's not like I haven't worked on my own stuff. I do a lot of therapy and whatnot. And I've tried to dig myself out of the hole, so to speak. And a lot of people in a similar boat. So yeah, I don't know. That was the story of Skyline. And that was the song Skyline. That's what that song is about. And I didn't put it on Misery Season because we ran out of time, and now it's on Tomorrow Will Be Better. So yeah, I mean, in theory, it really should be on Misery Season, but it ended up on Tomorrow Will Be Better, and it's I don't know, one of the songs I'm more proud of on the new album as well. So it's got a bit of good feedback. I'm interested, I'm a bit of a what if I had been able to include that song on Misery Season? Do you know what I mean? Would that have really completed the album? But it is what it is, and here we are now, and it's out now. So at the end of the day, I'm still here, and I got to release that album, that song, and now this new album. So I guess it's worked out for the best.
100%. Yeah. I mean, thanks for being so honest about that. I know it's part of that album, but it's also thanks to kind of ladle bear there. I think people really appreciate that, and I think I said to you about that song, and I didn't know it was Leftovers. I was like, that song's really grim. Like I said to you, because it's probably my favorite track off the album, and you were like, no, it's meant to be grim, and then you explained a little bit about it. I was like, wow, fuck. So it's
heavy.
an incredible song. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Cause it was, it's not sometimes it's, I don't know. A lot of people say to me, they're like, oh, how do you just lay it out there? And I think for me, it's just a compulsion. I have to, It's got to have integrity. It's got to have heart. And it's got to be true to myself. So I have to do it. I don't find it hard to lay it all out there. Sometimes I find it hard. Sometimes performing those songs over and over again because you've got to dig into really dark times of your life. But at the same time, it provides some catharsis, so that's good. Like I said, get some positivity out of all the negativity. So
does it give you? Yeah, when you mention particularly that which you just mentioned, does it give you kind of comfort? I mean, not only from getting that song out there, but probably performing it live because it's obviously, it's got a hook in there. You know what I mean? So it's giving you comfort as well as really fucking good songs as well. But it's got that. For you, that's that deep hook.
Well, personally, we've never actually performed Skyline live yet. We have plans to, but we haven't performed it live. But I've got pretty much all of my songs, like This Is Misery, all that sort of stuff. It all touches on all that sort of stuff. So you can, So Broken, stuff from the new album is Never Gonna Be Okay. You can touch, you can't swing a cat or throw a stone in the ATF without hitting the song that is talking about my struggles with my own mental health.
Yeah.
I see the world. So it's a lot of dark subject matter. I mean, it's good. It's good to get it out there, and it's good to see people connect with it. Like I said, to get positivity out of that negativity hopefully makes people feel less alone, makes me feel less alone as well when people connect with it, because a lot of people feel alone in this world. We've got a million ways to keep in touch these days, and yet people are feeling lonelier than ever. Go figure. I mean, it makes sense to me, because it's less personal, the way the world is now, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's like
our worlds are somehow bigger and smaller all at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can talk to people, like we're talking now on the other side of the country. I can talk to people on the other side of the world. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting here by myself in my house. You know what I mean? Once the laptop's off, I'm by myself.
Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing because it's like we're so well connected, but it's that I don't know what the exact phrase is it's saying about the difference between being lonely and alone. So we're in a world that's so interconnected, but you can still be alone or you can be lonely, and it's the variations of that, and it's
incredible. It is, and it's a problem that I guess our generation is one of the first to experience because previous generations haven't had that technology. With all technology, I guess there are a lot of positives. There's always pros and cons to everything. Where we've solved one issue, there are now other problems because of that we have to deal with, and that's every generation. Every generation's had to deal with that. And that's just, I guess that's the human experience, We are just experiencing life as it's happening to us, and everything that's happened has simultaneously happened to everyone else before, or has happened to other people before, and also hasn't happened to other people before, and that's life, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. I think we're gonna dip into part 2 because we're having a very good chat here. So I think we've got to, because of we're not in the corporate world, we've got to drop out and then come back in. So
I'll see you on the flip side.
With part 2. It's been a long chat, pretty diverse, and a lot to cover. So my next question was, is there any particular songs you want to touch on from the album? Because there's many great songs on it. We touched on Skyline. Is there any favourites or any particular songs you want to touch on? So many good songs.
I mean, it's hard to say because, I find that it's sort of when you've worked on them and you were sort of there for every part of the process, it's kind of like, it's hard to see the forest through the trees sort of thing because you were
so involved in every aspect of the songs. Um, Favorites, yeah, I don't know, like like I said, Skyline I'm proud of. Not that I'm not proud of the other ones, but Skyline particularly. There's just cool songs for they're cool songs for different reasons. It's never going to be okay as a decent opener, and sets the scene for the rest of the album, so it does its job, which is what it was intended for. Dark Hearts, Dead Minds is a bit of a favorite. Breathing Concrete, which was one that Benny sort of came in with the bass line for, and then we built the song around that bass line, which is pretty cool. I dig that song. And the actual title and the whole theme of the song came from a lyric from the song Disconnect, which is on the same album as well. So I got the lyric from that and then just turned it into a whole song because I was like, that's a cool phrase. So I wrote a whole song about that phrase. I do that a lot, actually. I've done that previously, with songs and such. Um, yeah, the song Program to Suffer off our Program to Suffer EP comes from a song from 11 Past called Everyday Slavery. There's a phrase in that Program to Suffer, and I wrote a song about that as well. So I have form for that sort of thing. It's
Yeah.
just these things I just sort of do because it interests me, and I sort of like, I just like to keep a theme going and stuff such. So yeah, I mean, on those are some of my favorite songs. I like Exploitation as well. That's kind of cool. Hit It and Quit It, 2.5 minutes, like
Yeah,
hard,
flat out.
like like hardcore influenced industrial metal. Do you know what I mean? Just like straight up. So it's cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's songs there. They're just yeah, they're all kind of cool in their own way, but yeah, those are probably some of my sort of favorites thus far. The thing is I find that you release the album, and I think that for me personally, I only really start appreciating it about a year or two after it's been out, because then I've got enough distance from the album, because like up until that point, you're just so consumed with the whole process
Yeah.
of writing, recording, and then the business of just putting it together, putting the package together to get it out to the world, and like you're just so consumed. And then, some of these songs, we recorded and then we didn't play them for like freaking 2 years. Do you know what I mean? And so then when we like going to put them in the set, we have to relearn them again, and they take on a whole new life of their own with the new lineup and such. So yeah, if you ask me that again in a year or two, I'll probably give you a more. The answer will probably be different. Like some of the songs, I'll be like, "Well, I like this because of this," and some of the songs as they come into the set, I might be like, "Oh, I really like this song now because it works really well live." So you never know.
Yeah, no, it varies. I was gonna say the sequencing is very good. I like how it's never gonna be okay starts it and then the title track at the end. I think it's it flows really well. Like it's got that mix of tempo and energy, but it's also, yeah, the two tail ends, the two kind of the one at the start and the end works perfectly. I think so well. But I also wanted to touch on the bonus tracks on the CD
Ah,
that I really dug, particularly Less Misery. I think it's as good as the album stuff. And what's the that was nearly going to get the flick, I believe.
yeah. So, yeah, well, to touch on your first comment, firstly, thank you. I actually put a lot of thought into whether it be a set list or a track list for the album. I put a lot of thought into how it flows, not just song-wise, but thematic as well, thematically, with the lyrics and what it's saying. So I put a lot of thought and effort into that. So I'm glad it's appreciated. But yeah, with the bonus tracks, so like um, given that the world consumes music differently these days, again, this is something I wanted to do on Misery Season. I wanted to do on the CD, just stuff that was just for the CD, just some bonus tracks and such, and maybe a secret track. But we again just ran out of time and money with that album, so I did it on this album, and I'm glad I did. But the two bonus tracks were sort of, they just, I don't know, for whatever reason, just didn't hit it with me. I don't know. So we sort of agreed that they were sort of not odd ones out, but they didn't really fit into the sequence of the 11. Because, I mean, Misery Season had 11 tracks, but 9 of them were songs and 2 of them were sort of interludes and intros. Whereas this album has 11 songs, like straight up songs, if you get the digital version. And if you get the bonus track version, there's 14 on there. So 2 bonus tracks and a secret track if you are that way inclined and you hang around. I always wanted to do a secret.
The secret track's good as well.
Yeah, always wanted to do a secret track because yeah, again, I grew up in that era where you put the CD on and the album ends and then you're like cool and like you'd just be just chilling out and the CD was still going. You're like, what's going on here? What's going on here? And you'd listen to it.
79, 85, 89. It's like
yeah, exactly. So yeah, we wanted to do that. And yeah, the 2 bonus tracks just didn't really. The secret track's interesting. It's called SAD, which is an acronym actually, which stands for stressed and depressed, which is what I attended it stand for. But like it also, there's a whole bunch of other meanings to it, but that's the main one. And yeah, that was interesting. That was one of the better songs that we were writing it. And once it got mixed, it came back to us and we're just like, it just didn't hit with the intensity that we were like hoping for. I don't know. There was just something about it that was missing. We had such high hopes for that song. And I was like, that's the secret track. I just was like, that's going to be the secret track for whatever reason. It just spoke to me. I was like, for any hardcore fans, I wanted stuff that only like the dedicated hardcore fans could get hold of. And that's not to say that we won't eventually release those digitally so everybody can have it. We're not one of those bands that's like, oh no, you have to. But this was just something that in the initial stages, it's just for the diehards, to thank them for supporting us, really. So yeah, we've done that, and just because I wanted to do that because I grew up with bonus tracks and secret tracks and what have you, different versions for different territories. But if you buy our CD, no matter what territory you're in, you're going to get the bonus tracks and the secret track. And if you've got it digitally, eventually we'll release those 3 tracks for you, possibly free. I'm not sure. Might just give it away as a free EP or a download at some point. I'm not sure. We haven't got that far yet because we've only just released the album. So stay tuned, basically.
If you're a fan of the band, I would say they're definitely worth it. But on your point, that's right. You've got to, anyone that's in bands, everything can't make the album. It's not, that's the reality of it. But definitely track them down when they're available or buy the physical CD. That's even better.
Yeah, definitely. Read the liner notes, read the lyrics, have something physical and tangible that you can hold and make an experience out of it, I would suggest.
Now, I wanted to talk about someone that was involved in the production, and I must admit, even when I reviewed the album, he's done some good stuff, but I actually went even deeper in the stuff he does. Phenomenal amount of bands that he has done. I have 2 questions. How did that go? And how the hell did you get him? Like,
who are you talking about?
We're talking about Alan, the man, the
Alan,
man.
Yeah. So, okay. So with Misery Season, we worked with we basically had the same production team. We recorded with Sumo Studios for Misery Season and Tomorrow Will Be Better here in Perth. Tristan Sturmer at Sumo Studios is great. He really pushed us on both albums to get the best out of us, and he's a stickler. He's a stickler for every little bit. He can zoom in on something and be like, that's not quite right, or we need to do this. And as frustrating as that can be when you're in the studio for 10 hours and you're like, for fuck's sake, like I just want it to be done. But yeah, but he does push you to get the best out of you. And then we send that across to Liquid Studios, Daniel Thabet in Vermont, Liquid Studios, and he mixes it. Now he has a deal with Alan Duche. That's how we hooked that up. So because he said to us, like, I remember when we were talking to him to do the Misery Season album, and we were umming and ahhing about whether to keep just record here with Tristan and then get him to mix and master it as well. And then Alan was like, well, I can mix your stuff. Obviously, he couldn't record it because, we're in another continent.
Yeah.
But he was like, I can mix and master it. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and then he sort of threw in like, oh, I do have this deal with Alan Duche at West Side Music. And that name triggered something. I was like, hold on a second. I know that name. And you look at his discography and you're like, holy shit. Like, Sepultura, Chimera, Every Time I Die. Like, he's just about worked with everybody at some stage. And he's a mastering engineer. So I was like, Daniel threw that in the ring and I was like, sign us up. So we went with him and we did the same team. So for the Misery Season and Tomorrow Will Be Better, it was the same production team. Tristan, Daniel, Alan for both albums. And pretty happy with the results. I mean, they were all really good to work with. Got the best out of every stage of it. They all worked really hard, and couldn't be happier with the results. Whether we go there next time, I'm not sure. Might go somewhere different just to mix it up a bit. But again, I've only just released this one, so I'm not thinking about the next one yet.
Yeah. I mean, his work. I mean, I knew he did a few things, Cannibal Corpse, Devil Driver, but then he's done like Buzzcocks, the Meatmen. He's done Grandmaster Flash, the hip hop. I didn't even know that. But he actually did. I don't know if you know this because it blew my mind. Hatebreed Satisfaction is the Death of Desire, which
I did not know that, but I love that album. Yeah,
of course, yeah. And that's and he's even doing. I've seen more recently. He's going to do, I think, a Nails and Black Dahlia Murder remasters this year. So, but
you mentioned Devil Driver, and I'd forgot he did the latest Devil Driver album as well. I was like, oh yeah, he did too. That was good. Like you said, he's like, throw a stick. He's worked with anybody, everybody,
He even did like old Misfits, like Collection 2 and stuff. So he's worked with the Misfits and that as well, just like amazing. But they're those overseas names, but I think the difference for those albums, it makes it pop and it's not generic. Like I think it's because your albums are very dynamic, so yeah, it's a big deal. I think it's great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. It's funny because I think because I mean, it might be more so in metal. People still care about that sort of thing, but in music in general now, because again, people aren't reading, they aren't getting physical, so they're not reading the liner notes. So they just, and no shade on anyone who does this, just gets it on Spotify or buys it on iTunes. I mean, frankly, I buy a lot of stuff on iTunes now as well, just because of the convenience. But I still do look into the production things, and I think that's just when the diehards look into those, like who recorded it, who mixed this, who mastered it. I want to know, and that was one of the things back in the day that I used to do. So, there are a lot of people when I say the name, I was like, oh, Alan Duche mastered this. They're just sort of blank, and they're like, who? And I'm like, oh, fuck me, man. Like, do your homework, do your history, but I don't do that for everyone. I do that for us, and I do it for people like you who are just like, holy shit, that's awesome. And I'm glad you're probably the first person that's actually said to me, that's fucking awesome. So finally, it's paid off. 2 albums it took us, but hey, that's awesome because people don't understand what actually goes into the recording, mixing, and mastering process. Every single person along the process has put blood, sweat, and tears into this.
Yeah,
there's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. So, yeah,
this is true. What I want to diverting from that a little bit, I wanted to touch on your videos because you've always, two things. I always love the connection between art and music,
Mm.
and you've got a history of fantastic videos, and I'm always a fan of the good music video, and you've produced some crackers, even if we just go off this album, some really, you know, visually engaging, great videos. So, even the more kind of later ones, really, yeah, like they just grab you, which is good. Who doesn't love a good, music video?
I think me personally, the reason, okay, so yeah, I wanted it to be that connection between the art and like, well, I mean, it is music is art. So I wanted the music to connect with the visual because and again, no shade, I'm not dissing anyone who does this, but there's enough videos out of there of the band playing in a room, the band playing in a warehouse, whatever. And like like I understand the logistics of why you would do that. It's cheaper and like it is expensive to do these things. Like let's not hide that. For every band who releases a video clip, anyone who disses that clip, it's like, dude, you have no idea how expensive it is, how much effort it takes to make these things. That being said, like I've always been like more of like I don't ever want to just release here's us playing in a room somewhere because that bores the shit out of me. Like you
Yeah,
get the point like 2 minutes into the thing or like less. And so it's not engaging. It's just, but I understand why people release it. It's just sometimes you don't have enough time. You don't have enough money. You've just got to release something. So to go with that single or whatever. But I've always wanted to again have a little bit of include the art in that and the theme. So I'm pretty proud of the drowning video clip because that tells a story. If you follow it close enough, I'm not going to spoon feed it to you. But if you follow the lyrics, if you know what we're about, you can literally just follow that story through. And I work with Simon Holland, who's a friend of mine over here in WA, and he's the main guy in a Viking metal band called Wrath of Fenrir from here over here. And so I know him through the scene. And he's day job. That's his day job. He's a filmographer as his day job. He does documentaries, all sorts of stuff. So for that video clip, I was like, hey, let's work together. And yeah, I was really proud of that one because we put a lot of effort in. There was a lot of shoot days. Again, we did do the whole here's us in a room with like, stuff going on, but we intermixed it with a story because that's what we wanted to do. That's probably the video clip I'm most proud of, I would say. The more recent ones, we did one with Vin from Tempest Rising is another band over here. He does a bit of photography and filmography as well. And we did Still Bleeds My Heart, which was good. Which is again, it was us playing in like a fucked up abandoned what was it? It was an abandoned animal testing facility, which has now been demolished here in WA
wow.
in near Rockingham. Like we filmed there, and literally a couple months later they demolished it. It was like fuck, lucky we got in there, because when you're filming this sort of stuff, we didn't ask for permission or anything. We just went and filmed in abandoned places because that's just DIY. That's what we do. So we filmed it with him, and that was fun. Much like working with Simon, that was also fun. So we just filmed that day and then we interspliced it because that song's about like, the world in general and how messed up it is. And so we interspliced it with stock footage from like news reports and all that sort of stuff. So that was fun. That came out pretty good. A lot of people have watched it and liked that. And then the most recent one was Breathing Concrete, which is filmed with the new lineup. And we worked with Joseph Varley here from Dark Spirit Photography, who's recently worked with Voyager, who just did Eurovision and such.
Yeah, yeah.
And another band from Perth. Perth metal scene is strong and a lot of really good heavy hitters coming out of Perth. They say there's something in the water over here because for how small our population is, we produce a lot of decent bands. But to be fair, that's Australia in general. in general, I think Australia has some of the best metal bands in the world and some of the most overlooked metal bands in the world because people tend to, because, we have a bit of that tall poppy syndrome over here, and people tend to overlook just because they're homegrown how good some of the bands just in your backyard are. And I'd say to anyone, check them out because, you know, there's some fantastic bands from Australia all over the place, not just from Perth. But anyway, so we worked with Joseph Varley and on Breathing Concrete, and we had a theme that came together really quickly. Like we just did what we had to. Our drummer had a mate who was doing some renos on a place. It was like an old wedding reception center in Armidale over here. And we just got it for the day, went in there, filmed our bits, and Joe bought some lighting and did all sorts of cool, nifty things. So it's us playing actually that is probably the song that's most just us playing in a room, but there's all sorts of trickery going on as well. So yeah, it's kind of cool with the lighting, and there is a bit of a story there as well. We put a lot of effort in, as much as we can, given the time constraints and financial constraints and whatnot, because anyone in a band knows how expensive all this sort of stuff is. So, we do our best to not just be playing in a room somewhere, and we don't want to just release something just for the sake of it, because if you're going to invest some money in it and effort, you may as well, go that extra mile.
Yeah, it's great. And the Breathing Concrete, I like that. I thought it was the way it was shot, and that was, it's a point of difference from the other clips as well. It's all a bit of variety. So,
Yeah.
And, kudos to you again for putting in a lot of effort. And what I wanted to touch on now was you do some great merch, which I have some here, like the stubby holder, the shirt I'm wearing.
Nice.
I've even got a hat here, but I didn't want to overkill it because it looks like a plug. But I must say you you do the DIY stuff really well, like with the merch and stuff. The way that it's really good, and you've really got a really tight and professional website as well, which is quite unusual for like a lot of bands. So.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. It's mostly because actually I got some thunder over here. It's raining today in Perth for the first time in a long time. It's been really hot lately, but anyway, it's raining. But yeah, we basically our fans are just great, and they've supported us, and at first you just start printing some shirts, and then they sell quickly, and people want more, so they're asking for this and that, and we're like, all right, when we can afford it, we get the hats, we do this and do that, and give it a bit of variety so people can get different things. We put a bit of effort into it. We got stuff. We got a drowning t-shirt. That shirt you're wearing right now is a So Broken t-shirt. So they're sort of thematically linked to songs or themes that we have. But yeah, we just want to make sure that people have a bit of choice and a bit of variety in what they're buying, and we can only really do that because we're supported so well over here, and just in general, the ATF crew, our fans, just support us so well that we can keep churning out great merch for them to get hold of. So yeah, that's why we do it,
It's
because
great.
our
Yeah,
fans let us do it. They afford us the ability to do that. So thank you to the ATF crew is all I can say. And if you keep supporting us, we'll keep putting out merch, and if you've got suggestions, you want this, we got hoodies, we got everything, we got beanies, hats. If you want to see something, let us know, and we'll consider it.
I'd definitely say, as someone who's bought a few things, I'd definitely, check out their social media and go on their website, because there's always great stuff and it's all fantastic quality. So definitely check it out. I want to talk about Brutal Records. So you've signed to that record label. How did that happen? And they're European based, I believe.
They're based in New Orleans,
Okay,
Louisiana.
completely wrong.
So, okay, but here's the thing. So Long story short, we wanted to release this new album through a record label basically to expand our fan base and to get representation in territories where we haven't been able to really push ourselves into. So we were shopping the album around for a while. This is all the business stuff after the album's been recorded. So we're shopping it around, shopping around. Some people weren't interested, some people were. And then we engaged with Brutal Records, and long story short, they said they could push it into areas that we couldn't necessarily get it into, and thus we signed with them. Really, that's as simple as it is. I mean, it's a really complicated process, but that's the long and the short of it. And they, thus far they managed to get us some distribution through Seasons of Mist Records in Europe. So we do have representation. So now people in Europe can buy our CDs directly through Seasons of Mist. So without having to pay massive amounts of postage from Australia, you can buy it from Seasons of Mist, and you can just get it in Europe, with little to no postage fees, and people in America can buy it through Brutal Records and such. So yeah, and you can get it in Australia either, at our shows or through links that we've got through Brutal Records. And in bricks and mortar stores as well. They're in Target, I believe, and Sanity and stuff like that. So yeah, they've basically pushed it out there and like tried to get us some press in territories where we haven't been able to. So yeah, that's why we went with them, and that's sort of the process thus far.
It's yeah, that's awesome. That's congratulations on that. The funny thing is, being in a sort of an industrially adjacent band myself, it's funny where the fans are. Like there's I don't know, when you look on the like Bandcamp and stuff like that. That's I know even my band, but I've heard from a few colleagues that are in industrial bands that are like Mexico and Germany and other places. It's really intriguing, like where the fans, where the interest is.
What's funny is if you ask me outside of Australia, where are the sort of places where you're getting the most sort of traction, I would have said South America. Even before we signed with Brutal, South America for some reason has always really dug us. We've had Mexico. For whatever reason, in Mexico they just love their industrial adjacent or industrial music, or whatever reason they dig us. South America, like Argentina, Brazil, but Mexico especially, and Germany as well, man. I'm always sending stuff to Germany, and I'm just like, Jesus, like the Germans, and we've had a few reviews in German, which I've had to translate. Obviously, thank fuck for Google Translate these days. You can just click on it and be like, translate it for me, please. So yeah, and Germany, especially, we got a bit in the UK, but yeah, those Mexico and Germany, definitely two of the places I cannot explain it. I do not know why. Don't ask. But we're the same. We're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Mexico and Germany.
And I was going to say a big shout out. There's a guy who does Doomsday Machine, who does those playlists and he actually, so this is on Facebook, but he also, he does these Spotify playlists, and, one of them, he actually recently did an Australian one, which includes All This Filth, of course.
I think that was because of you. You put him on to us, so thank you very much for putting him on.
Yeah. Thanks. He's very savvy. Like he knew industrial bands from the 90s as well, like really kind of obscure ones. So yeah, Mexico and Germany, they're right on it. So who would guess? Now I wanted to touch on what you got, your plans are upcoming, and I do believe you've got some exciting an exciting gig announcement.
Well, I'm going to share this just for you, my friend Mark, because it hasn't officially been announced yet. But by the time you post this, it should have been announced. Basically, the other day, literally 2-3 days ago, we found out that we are going to be the local support in Perth for Machine Head and Fear Factory, which is massive, absolutely massive for us. I was telling you before we started this interview that when I first started jamming with people in my dad's spare bedroom when I was younger, two of the first songs I ever jammed were Old by Machine Head and Shock by Fear Factory. Were literally two of the first songs I ever jammed, and they are still two of my all-time favorite bands to this day. So this is massive. We're just so pumped to be asked to open for this. I mean, we've supported Powerman 5000 before, which was great. Those guys were really nice. And it was an awesome show. And this, I think, is some next level stuff because it's in Perth. It's at Astor Theatre. It's like 11 to 1200 capacity, sold out before, So, I mean, we can't really ask for, a better opportunity and just legends of the game, really. And so we're stoked to be doing it. And we're just hoping to go represent the ATF crew, represent the Perth metal scene, the West Australian metal scene, and more broadly the Australian metal scene. We just want to thank everyone for their support because you're one of the reasons that we afforded this opportunity, and we are hoping to do our best and not let anyone down. Basically, we want to represent for everyone that supported us, and like I said, Perth metal, Australian metal, WA metal, Australian metal. ATF crew, we're representing you. So thank you very much.
Very exciting. Congratulations. It's a big one. I mean, one of the gigs of the year. We've had a lot of overseas bands coming, but to score that, it's kind of what the cliche is, but dreams are made of, to play with that.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty amazing. I want to touch on, we're finishing up now. So, but I did have about the Perth music scene. So that's been fundamental, and historically the bands that have come out of Perth, or WA in general, have been amazing. So it seems to just something in the water. They just keep producing great bands.
What I think it is, from my limited experience of touring over in the East Coast, and like I've said, Australia in general, because Australia is isolated from the rest of the world. So we in Australia, in the Australian metal scene and hard music scene, whether it be hardcore, industrial, whatever, in the Australian heavy alternative scene, have to really push ourselves to be good, to be great, and to be heard outside of Australia. Now, when you come from Perth, Western Australia, the most isolated capital city in the world, that is then magnified again because it's hard enough for us to even just make noise over in the East Coast, let alone overseas. And you could argue, we've got the internet these days and everyone's interconnected, but you still do get drowned out by the wall of sound. So, you still need to make it. But the Perth scene, especially, I think it's the isolation, because it's so expensive. It's so hard to get over East and overseas. It's the maybe lack of opportunity, although there is opportunities, that being said. But because there's less venues over here, there's a smaller scene. But what I will say is it's thriving over here. The scene over here is tight, it's thriving, it's huge. They're ravenous for over here. And any band from the East Coast, I would suggest come to Perth and experience the Perth music scene because we are ravenous. They want it. And when it goes off, it goes off. Like, take my word for it. And so the bands that you hear on the East Coast that are from Perth have already done the hard yards in Perth. There are less venues, less opportunities. So we've had to really hone our sound and do what we got to do. And also because I guess we're so isolated, we just do whatever the hell we want because, the chance of success is really low. So we just whatever, we're going to just be us. And if we're going to succeed, that's because we're being us. So there's a lot of bands in Perth that do really well because of that mentality, I guess. And because we have to strive to be better because there are less opportunities. Not every touring act comes to Perth. So when those support slots come back, everyone's competing. There's less venues, so you got to really compete to get the gigs in those venues and be on those lineups. So you know, and then to get over east, then you got to do it all again in a place you've never been before and no one's ever heard of you. So yeah, I mean, you've got to work really hard, and I guess that's why there's per head per capita some of the best music and metal in Australia comes from Perth, and I will always stand up for the Perth metal scene, the West Australian metal scene, and Australia in general. When I talk to people from overseas or whatever, I'm like, check it out. There's just great stuff coming from here.
Yeah, 100%. We're right towards the end, so we don't slip into part 3. Thank you very much for your time, my friend. Fantastic conversation. We've, we're hitting 80 minutes now. Yeah, check out everything that All This Filth has done, all the videos, everything. Any final words, particularly to your legion of fans out there, the ATF?
Firstly, thank you, Mark, for having us. It's been great catching up with you, my friend. I haven't seen you since we toured with you in Victoria. Check out Knife. They're a fantastic industrial metal band. I cannot stress how nice those guys are and how great they are at what they do. Like I said, Australian metal. Thank you again to the ATF crew and all the fans, Australia and worldwide, for supporting us. It's because of you that we still have a platform to do this. Stay tuned, because outside of the Machine Head gig, we're looking to get over to the East Coast again. We're talking to people. So things are in place. We can't announce anything yet because nothing's set in stone, but we are going to come to a town near you. And when we come, we hope to see you all there. So thanks everyone for all the support. Check out the album, support your local bands, go to local gigs. And yeah, just thank you ATF crew, and thank you Mark for having us.
My pleasure, man. So yeah, as he said, check it all out. You can't go wrong. The album of the year, I would say. So definitely check it out. So
thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Take care, man. I'm just gonna